Welcome back to another week of Kernel at the Buzzer. We want to remind you that all the opinions of everyone on this podcast are the opinion of the speaker and the speaker alone and do not reflect the opinion of the entire Kernel. I'm your host, Colton Johnson, and this week it is all about the monstrosity that took place in Gainesville. Kentucky football fell 48-20 to the Florida Gators. We're going to talk about everything that happened down there coming up next. Welcome back to another week of Kernel at the Buzzer. This week you have stumbled upon the very rare but always productive two-man podcast. I am joined by the assistant sports editor of the Kentucky Kernel and Jonathon Bruner. And sir, I believe you watched a football game this weekend.
I did indeed. I had boots on the ground in Gainesville.
I'd appreciate it if you had told me about the mess that went down there.
I mean, that's a great way to put it. I mean, you kind of expected a mid-off. I mean, two not-so-great teams going at it might result in a good game. That was kind of the thought process going in. Both teams have had major flaws. Both teams have had disappointing seasons, to say the least. Mm-hmm. And both teams really needed a win. So it had some of the makings for a good game.
I mean, it's just I was watching it, and, obviously they come out field goal. Kentucky comes out, gets their touchdown. Rayner misses the extra point because, of course, they can't have a lead. They gotta keep it close.
Right.
And again, I feel like it's kind of this narrative with this team where things just kind of go wrong at the worst times. And I feel like on Saturday it was never just one aspect of the football. It was all three mediums of football.
Yep. I mean, it was just that. I mean, you look at the offense, they couldn't get anything going basically the entire game. They had the touchdown. They had two touchdowns, and then the other one was from Barryon Brown running it back. Mm-hmm. They haven't got more than two touchdowns in an SEC game this season.
Shout out Barryon, though.
Yeah,
most of the time.
Breaking the record. I mean, that's super impressive. That man's ability to return footballs is going to get him on an NFL roster.
I mean, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous in the sense that, he ran it back, and it looked like it didn't matter to him.
Yeah.
Watching the broadcast, it was kind of let's huddle on over to the sideline. That's not that big of a deal. I respect that he, given the gravity of the situation and what he just did in terms of, Kentucky football, that all went away because he was we are getting destroyed right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the rightful mindset of a competitor. I think that was a great look on his part to do that. Because, I mean, there's a picture going around of somebody that doesn't hardly play doing the Gator chomp to Gator fans. I think it might even been on that kickoff return.
It was. I very vividly remember that because I'm all for talking a little smack, but not when you're getting destroyed, and especially and I feel like there's always kind of that, not to be cringy, but aura around the Gator chomp. It's
yes.
Kind of this long reveled tradition in football, and to do that on a kick return, that one homeboy you're blocking on. Let's relax.
Exactly. I
feel like if anyone's going to do the Gator chomp on that, it should be Barryon, but he had the brain to realize that it's not the time or the place. If you're skull dragging them, sure.
Yeah.
But they're not. But the thing that really bothered me watching that game was just an absolute, I would say, collapse by the Kentucky defense on all, especially that front seven. It was just abysmal.
Oh, yeah. I mean, for sure. And the part that really stuck out to me was the secondary just getting torched.
Yeah.
I mean, I believe there was 5 plays of 30 yards or more. Mm-hmm. And I mean, and if you look at Lagway's completions, that's all it was.
Yeah.
I mean, I think he averaged around 37 yards of completion, something around there.
18.5
yards of completion.
I think so. No, you're right. 7 completions for 259 yards. Holy cannoli.
Yeah, and I mean,
if you look at their receivers on the box score, if you look at their receivers, their longest plays for each of them, the longest one from Elijah Badger is 58, Kamir Dyke 44, Eugene Wilson 40. They got 3 guys that had 40 or longer plays by themselves.
And I mean that's the part that's troublesome to me is it's you have a true freshman, and you let him beat you in the easiest way possible, just airing it out. Mm-hmm. You didn't make it challenging on him. You didn't make him throw in tight windows. You didn't. I mean, some of the throws were just jump balls and they happened to win, but some of these were wide open. I mean, and that's the thing right there is it's you have a true freshman. You gave him all the tools to win the game. Mm-hmm. You didn't even make him try.
Mm-hmm. And it's also because it's not your typical like true freshmen come in, it's not like Graham Mertz goes down and he hasn't been involved. Like Lagway's not been involved the entire time.
Yeah,
that's not been the case. Lagway's been seeing snaps. They've had that like dual quarterback system that they've been, and it's been working for him. But with Mertz going down, I would say that even if Mertz comes back, that his job is gone. I think his job has been gone, and I don't know if that's ever going to change.
Oh yeah.
But I struggle in understanding how Brad White and Mark Stoops and everyone on that coaching staff, it's not like they didn't have film to look at.
Exactly.
They knew what this guy was.
Absolutely. And I mean, even like getting into the elevator post game, we were in there with Florida media as well, and they were talking about this should have been done a long time ago. It's finally shown why this should have been done a long time ago. Mm-hmm. So there's a belief within people in that Florida program that this guy is it. Mm-hmm. And he took a great step on Saturday by carving up what to that point had been a really good defense.
That's the issue. It's because we have this expectation for the Kentucky defense in our brains, and it's kind of like been this big brother to the offense that like gives them space until they can figure their stuff out.
Yep. And
it's kind of sad to say, but in a normal Kentucky football game, 20 points typically is enough for Kentucky to get it done if they have what we would call an average defensive performance.
Yeah.
But now that that's gone, I just struggle in understanding where this program goes from here.
And yeah, I mean, it's starting to become a harsh reality that a bowl game might not even be in the cards for this football team. Yeah. And that's the most troublesome part is it's like even the lowest of expectations, something to hang their hats on for fans, is now not looking like an automatic by any means. And it's just like, and I think you said it perfectly, the defense was kind of the big brother to an offense that has still not figured it out.
Yeah.
I mean, you still got inconsistent quarterback play. You still got inconsistent play calling. You got inconsistencies across the board. And, Bush can get up there and he can say that all he wants. And he says it all the time.
We'll look at the film.
We're inconsistent. Okay. But there's been nothing done about it. And that's the thing. Like, they found success with the trick play, the flea flicker for the touchdown. You found success with that. Did they try anything else like that again? Any creative, any X's and O's, really mind-bending plays? No. Mm-hmm. Can you almost guarantee they're going to run it on every single first down? Yes.
It's kind of I kind of had like a why now moment when they put Cutter in, because it was one, I understand kind of wanting to get your young guy that like Stoops has talked about him on multiple instances, like this guy is going to be the future of Kentucky football, like how much faith he has in this dude. And I understand the idea of a trial by fire, but you are getting destroyed in a historic, storied SEC stadium that even if this team isn't that successful this year, that's not an easy football play. That's not an easy football stadium to play in.
I mean, the place was still sold out. There was still 6,000 in there. I mean, you know what I mean?
I think they failed to understand that both Florida, like you've brought it up on multiple instances in podcasts previous, that like in the same way that Kentucky fans are circling this game, so are Florida fans.
Yeah.
And that attributes to that environment, and just to throw a guy that's so young and has such little experience, obviously you don't want to throw a pick six on your first attempt. But in the same respect, I feel like it was kind of this sorry attempt to stop the bleeding that worked in the absolute inverse.
Yeah, I mean, I think if anyone else should have got more reps, it should have been Gavin. Mm-hmm. Because I think there needs to be real conversations had moving forward if Brock is the guy. Because, I mean, how long are we going to say when he figures it out? Yeah. When he does this, when he does that? We're in week 9.
Yeah.
I mean, like, that's the thing is it's like if this team really wants to make any real strides, it's time to take a look in the mirror. And I get it's hard to kind of go past the guy that you've been riding with, but I feel like a lot of the issues of this defense or the offense you can pinpoint to him.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's not to say Gavin's going to come in and change the game and they're going to win. They're going to beat Texas and beat Tennessee and they're going to win out. Not even saying he's better because we don't know. Mm. But there's a time where you have to at least see what you got.
Yeah.
And that's why I think maybe Cutter was not the right play there. It's and it's just hard because if he comes in and he starts slinging and he throws a touchdown and you're like, okay, this is a great confidence builder for him. You also are looking at it now like, could this be a confidence crusher? Is he going to be able to overcome, not even be able to complete a pass, not even be able, first play as a Wildcat is a pick six.
Yeah.
It's it's going to really test his mental fortitude at a really, really young point of his career. And that's why I agree of the kind of why now? What was there to gain from that?
It's kind of just looking back throughout this entire year and all these podcasts, and like I went back and watched a bunch of them, and like the amount of times we brought up Brock, and every single week, like not every single week, but some weeks we kind of switched the narrative up, like, oh, maybe this guy's got something going for him, like maybe this guy's not the worst thing ever. But I feel like we've reached a point where it's no longer like there's no longer multiple opinions on it.
No,
like the guy's not fit to be starting in the SEC.
He's just not, and I mean it is what it is. Simply put, there's a reason why he was a backup at Georgia. He can be a 5-star out of high school all he wants. There's a reason why someone was playing over him, and Kentucky has unfortunately learned that reason.
Yeah,
just because he just simply is not good enough. And I know that's ironic saying, sitting in front of here, not knowing, first thing about being a football player,
Yeah.
But it just is what it is, and he's shown it. There's been nothing that he has done where I have been like, he put the team on his back right there.
Yeah.
He took over the game.
Yeah.
He did this like some other quarterbacks in the SEC.
Yeah.
And that's what you have to have, that kind of quarterback to compete in the SEC. You just do. You look at Pavia at Vandy. You take Pavia off that team, they are not the same football team by any means. You take Jalen Milroe off Alabama, they are not the same team. You take Quinn out of Texas.
Even with all the backups they have.
Even with Arch, who has looked good, granted against nobody, but has looked good.
Mm-hmm.
They're not the same team. And that's the moral of the story is Brock is just not a guy that can take over and win you a football game. Things have to go right for Kentucky to win football games.
Like I don't even know if he's at the point where I would call him a game manager.
No. He can, so because I think with game managers do just enough to keep you in the game and give you a chance to compete.
Yeah.
I can't even say for sure that he does that, because it's just like even his interceptions. Granted, in this particular game, you can't really put it all on him because some of those were from tips and drop passes. That can't really all be his fault. But it still goes back to the theme of the entire year is it's not that he can't really win you a game, but he can certainly lose you one.
Yeah.
And that is why it's a problem that is just, it's a broken record at this point, and it's pretty obvious not much is going to change.
Mm-hmm.
But it's going to be a large reason why, especially if this team does not qualify for a bowl, why we look back and go, this was the failure of the year. And
Yeah.
it's going to come back to him 9 times out of 10.
I mean, you just look at the schedule. I mean, this team in conference play has failed to score more than 20 points.
Yeah.
That's poor.
They haven't scored more than 2 offensive touchdowns in any game.
It's poor. I mean, and like you said, like there's all you can kind of circle in all these reasons, and it kind of sucks. It really, like if you look at it from a broad perspective, it really sucks. Not being a Kentucky fan, like all that aside, just in the fact that this sole decision, because it's a good football team. Like, if you look at it from everything outside, this is a good football team. It sucks that this dude under center, because he's a young guy, he's our age. There's so much pressure on him, but at the end of the day, he just cannot deliver.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's just simply put, that's what it is. This team, to use NFL terms, is a quarterback away.
Yeah.
It's been like that for a long time, and it will continue to be that way. I mean, and Cutter might be the guy. Cutter could be the guy. But it brings back an age-old pattern of Kentucky not being able to develop quarterbacks.
Mm-hmm.
It's been the theme for years.
Yeah.
And it hasn't changed with Brock, and the verdict is still out on Cutter. We'll see when he gets a full season under center.
We can always just beat this dead horse of the Florida game. I feel like we're going to end up saying a lot of the same stuff.
Probably so.
We've talked about this 3-game stretch that was Vandy, Florida, Auburn, and how important it was.
Mm-hmm.
They got one more.
Yep.
They got one more. It's back at home. It's a team that has not won an SEC game itself. So you look at it on paper, it should be Kentucky's favorite, but for some reason I have an awful feeling about this football game.
As you should. There's no such thing as a guaranteed victory with this football team, with this program. And it just seems like all the makings are right for this just to completely collapse. I mean, it really does feel that way. There's really no there hasn't been any reason to be confident in this team to do the bare minimum.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it right there. I mean, we talked about this stretch. We said they have to go 2-1. They're 0-2. That's out the window. And you look at it now from a bowl perspective. You're not going into Neyland and winning with their play currently. You're not going to Austin and winning.
Yeah, I don't care if all of their smoke's gotten taken out of their smokestack, bro. They're gonna throttle this football team.
And so that means you've got Auburn, Murray State, and Louisville. You have to win all three.
Yep.
Louisville just took a really good Miami team to the wire, gave them all they wanted against arguably, if not the best quarterback in the country in Cam Ward.
Definitely the best offense.
Definitely the best offense, and they were right there with them, punch for punch. So it just worries me what they could do to this Kentucky team. Now, that being said, Louisville always appears to be an anomaly for some reason.
Yeah.
It always appears that no matter how good Louisville is, Stoops just has their number. It appears that way, and they're going to need it again this year because it might be the difference in them going home bowlless or not. And this game, we've said every week is a must-win. We say that every week, and it's no different. Auburn is, per SEC standards, not good, but Kentucky is showing they might not be either. So they got to have it.
As awful of a conversation as it is, I was sitting with my dad. We all were down in Florida. I was sitting down with my dad watching some football games, and he's a Mississippi State fan, and he's a very, very pessimistic Mississippi State fan. And he's the whole time watching the game, they could do something good. In his mind, Mississippi State is the worst team in the SEC. I just remember watching, and they have a new young quarterback in Michael Van Buren. He's a true freshman down in Starkville, and he's very good. And I was watching him, and watching this guy play, and he's pretty good. And my dad keeps on reiterating this team is the worst team in the SEC. And I was like, Dad, can I be honest with you? I think it might be Kentucky. He was like, what are you talking about? He's like, that's a heck of a defense. I was like, Dad, if you talk to anybody that knows football, if they would rather have a a good quarterback as opposed to a solid defense, which one would they pick?
You're going to pick quarterback every time. It's just the age of the sport.
Every single day of the week. And it sucks, but then I'd like your take on it. And I think it'll be answered for sure if this team loses to Auburn. But even right now, I think it sucks that Kentucky's in the running for the worst team in this conference.
Yeah, I mean, it diminishes all the work that Stoops has done since he's got here. This is the situation that he inherited when he got here, and he has done phenomenal work getting it to where it's at.
Yeah.
But it's kind of all coming crashing down quickly. Which for them to I think that the reason they're back in this conversation is because he might have overstayed his welcome. It's looking like now that if he would have took the A&M job, it probably would have been the best thing that happened to Kentucky, a blessing in disguise, so to speak, because it's only getting worse. And the bottom line is that it's kind of peaked under Stoops, and it's unfortunate because he's done so much for the program and so much for this bringing football to relevance in this state, college football to relevance in this state outside of Louisville, bringing it to the powerhouse of Kentucky, making them relevant in football. It's been impressive, and you don't see it a lot, but it's also kind of on the downslope. So while it's great all that he's done, unless there's some changes made, it's probably going to be right back to where it was when he started.
Now, with this Auburn team, you got a guy that's coached a lot of football in Hugh Freeze.
Mm-hmm.
You got a guy that can scheme you up pretty good in Hugh Freeze. But it's Hugh Freeze that has had nowhere near the personnel that he's had in years past. Obviously, different football teams for him, but now he's here at Auburn. And I said I had a bad feeling about this game, and I feel like this game is going to be one for Auburn where it's kind of like they figure something out.
It very well could be. It seems like a lot of teams are having those kind of games against Kentucky. It seems like Florida just had one.
Yeah.
They just learned. I think they learned a lot about themselves in that game. And I think that the recipe for disaster in playing UK is it's not hard to scheme against this offense. You know what's coming. You just do. And they've shown nothing else to deviate from it.
Mm-hmm.
They've stayed the same. They've stayed mediocre. And, and unless they come out and show something different, if they show some stride, show some improvement, they can easily win this game. It should not be a hard game to win, but this team has made every game hard to win in conference play.
I feel like Brock's going to be on an exponentially shorter leash with this game.
You would hope so, but I would also be shocked if he gets pulled out of this football game. Just because you've just seen it in the past. Stoops will stick with mediocrity before he makes a change. You've just seen it. You've seen it with Leary all of last year. There was plenty of times where, and granted, the room is not as deep as it was last year with Leary, to be fair. Mm-hmm. But you watch Leary go out, like I said earlier, lose them football games, and it doesn't matter. That's their guy. I don't know if it's a pride thing with Coach Stoops or what it is. He just doesn't want to be wrong. But I just don't, as much as it could be needed, I don't see them making a change until the game's over like they did last weekend.
I don't even think it's only set the quarterback position. I think we've had Jamarion Wilcox who has averaged 11 yards a carry for the past 2 games. I mean, I think he should be in that conversation of being the majority shareholder in the running back position. Yet I think it's kind of that same thing. Like early in the year, they found success with Demi, and Demi was consistent. You're playing easier competition early in the year.
Yep. Now
that he's back, obviously, if you get him to the 1 yard line and get him a snap, he's probably it's not that difficult for a college running back to get 1 yard.
Yeah.
It's not that difficult. And I don't know if it's kind of like just him being a freshman and him like having to, I guess in his mind, earn those snaps, even though I feel like most Kentucky fans feel that he has done that. But it's kind of just this gray area for me.
Yeah, that whole dynamic is very strange because you've heard Stoops out him multiple times to the media about his maturity, about, he had the whole shoe thing against Vandy, and then you've had it before of him showing up late to meetings, stuff like that. And this has been stuff that Stoops has just outright said in the open. So I don't know if it's one of those things where it's almost like he's trying to make an example out of Wilcox. It's a very strange situation because this kind of stuff happens all over college football, but it's rare you see a coach openly out a player like that to the media and talk about his maturity issues and just be so openly critical of their own players. Normally you see the exact opposite. Normally you would hear that same maturity issue classified as, working on some things internally with him, some kind of coach speak to kind of cover it up. But it's been strange how he's just been openly critical of him, saying, this is why he's not playing. It's because of these issues. Mm-hmm. And that's been a little bit strange, but I agree. Every time he's dynamite with football in his hands. Yeah. So, I mean, I feel like college coaches have put up with a lot less for better play.
And talking about Chip, too. I mean, I know obviously it's kind of maybe like kind of working him back in, but as advertised, I don't know if that's really been fulfilled either. Not
really, and he already tweaked his ankle.
No.
So it's like, that's another situation that just hasn't quite panned out. And, I mean, the limited action we've seen didn't really see too much. It's hard to tell. He didn't get a lot of snaps, so you can't really judge him off this one performance, but already hurt again. That's definitely it's tough luck for the guy, and it's feel bad for him. But, it does feel like Demi has kind of regressed a little bit as the season has went on, and Wilcox has thrived. So not saying he should be RB1, but certainly closer to 50-50.
Yes, absolutely. Well, if you had to give me a score prediction, as ugly or as pretty as it may be for this Saturday, what would you say?
I'm going to go – it's just so hard to put any faith in this team.
I know.
I'm going to go 20-17 Auburn.
I was going 21-17 Auburn. That's exactly, we're in the same ballpark there. Well, you, along with our very own Sarah Gibson, will be there at Kroger Field this Saturday at 7:45. Is that the kick?
Indeed.
Golly, they're giving us all the late kicks.
Indeed.
For all these ugly football games. Well, nonetheless, they will be there for all of your action and updates as the action unfolds. And until then, I've been Colton Johnson, and we will see you next week. We want to thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of Kernel at the Buzzer. We'll be back with plenty more next week after the Cats take on the Auburn Tigers, as well as our first look at the Kentucky basketball team, both men's and women's. Until then, I want to encourage you to head on over to KYKernel.com or KYKernel Sports on Twitter or X for all of your UK athletics coverage. And until then, I've been Colton Johnson, and we'll see you next time.